Chapter 1. Before the Mast. Nightingale crept almost silently through the crowd, eyes fixed on her target. There were at least 100 of her fellow students here, thronging about and chatting excitedly in their teams of 4. Her victim wasn't watching anything but the cigarette in his fingers. He didn't stand a chance. Air rushed around Nightingale as she jumped, latching onto Zeke's back with both arms like a monkey around a tree. "Zeke!" Her voice came out somewhere between a squeal and a screech, loud enough that a few nearby students turned to stare. Her friend grunted and spluttered, the cigarette tumbling away from his mouth. "You trying to kill me?" Nightingale dropped to the ground behind him. "You don't need my help for that." She extinguished the still smoldering cigarette with a well-placed step. "You've been here as long as I have. 2 years away from Earth, and you're still poisoning yourself." Zeke only grinned in response. "It also makes you smell terrible," someone said from behind them. They both turned, and Nightingale's eyes widened as she saw her sister Shayla standing there. Nightingale was usually thrilled to see her, but today was different. Today, Shayla was one of the proctors on the most important test of their new lives, the Magical Aptitude and Skill Test, or the MAST for short. "Makes me smell terrible?" Zeke scoffed. "See, here I was expecting something like, 'It's so good to see you, Zeke,' or maybe, 'How'd you do on your written exams?' You know, friend stuff." "No favoritism today," Shayla said. She sounded stern, but she was grinning at them as she flipped through a few pages on a worn clipboard. "Oh, but look at that. Lucky you. Looks like you two ended up together." "What a surprise." Nightingale smiled and shared a look with Zeke. "Consider that the only luck you get today," Shayla commented quietly. Nightingale looked around, wondering who their other partners would be. Of course, she and Zeke would be in a group together. She knew why Shayla didn't want to broadcast it, though, although students would be quick to pick up on any nepotism. While Nightingale knew each one of the students around them, the really short girl with multicolored eyes, the kid with the strange goat-like hooves instead of feet, none of them were actually friends. "Each team has 4 people," Zeke said. "Who are the other 2? "Rook, Lars, and Remy. Moretti." Shayla frowned at the clipboard for a moment, then shrugged and tucked it away under one arm. "You need me to point them out?" "Nah, we're good." Zeke rested one hand briefly on Nightingale's shoulder, pointing towards the single largest student in the room. "I see Rook there." "If you're not already, get acquainted. I've only got another few teams to assign before I explain everything." Shayla walked away, vanishing effortlessly into the crowd. "Guess it makes sense. Rook's gotta be the smartest student here, and the best fighter in our class," Zeke said. They started walking towards him, Nightingale leaving it to Zeke to clear a path for them. She lowered her voice so that the other students nearby couldn't hear her. "Sure, Rook makes sense. Remy, though? Isn't her dad some kind of mafioso? Who thought it was a good idea to pair someone like that with royalty? Couldn't make it look like favoritism, I'd bet, so they pick us a boat anchor to balance out our shared awesomeness." Zeke shrugged. "Every team has 4. So long as she doesn't slow us down, we'll be fine." It looked like the other half of their team was already assembled. Rook was easily doubled the size of Nightingale, with hands like hammers and a beard like a lion. "Hey, Zeke," Rook called. They met with a bone-cracking embrace. Remy stood just behind him, arms folded awkwardly in front of her. She looked up, smiling politely and extending a hand. "Hey, I guess we're together for the test, Princess Nightingale Arson, ma'am." Remy peered at Nightingale through impressive multicolored dreadlocks. Her massive owl-like wings folded behind her, making Remy's small frame look a little bigger. "Just Nightingale," she corrected Remy, taking the offered hand. "The title gets old quick. You're Remy, right?" "Yeah." Remy looked past her, up to the gigantic Rook, who was still talking with Zeke. "I know I'm probably not the sort of teammate you were hoping for." Nightingale blushed, unable to meet her eyes. Had Remy somehow overheard her talking to Zeke on the way over? She didn't get a chance to respond, because at that moment her sister stepped up onto a raised platform at the edge of the hall and started shouting, "All right, listen up, everyone." They did. Shayla smiled. "Welcome to the Magical Aptitude and Skill Test. If any of you have doubts about your ability to complete the MAST, the door's right there." She gestured behind them all, towards the towering double doors that led into the castle's main hall. A few stern teachers stood there, their armor polished and their weapons sharp. You will be required to go through the Acerbis, the Academy's training dungeon. The Acerbis is the real deal. Don't think the force fields of the bellicose cubes make up for stupid mistakes, because they don't. These monsters will kill you if you're not careful. There were a few seconds of silence. Nobody left, and Shayla's expression grew more intense. All right. We're going to walk through the doors behind the armory. Each of you is entitled to 1 pack of supplies. Choose wisely. If you get halfway through the test before you realize you didn't bring something important, too bad. She paused, waiting for her statement to sink in. If you have any last questions, ask either me or another proctor before you get into the dungeon. Once the test starts, you'll only get my help if things go very wrong. She raised her voice, glancing once around the room. For the sake of your grades, you do not want our help. There were no questions. Shayla's turned, hopping off the edge of the platform. Please follow me to the armory.